The greatest pleasure I've had is trying to do something that everybody says could not be done. I'll just share perhaps a moment in time which I will always cherish. I decided that India could produce its own car. Everybody, my friends overseas in the automobile business, said that this couldn't be done. We had to go through a collaboration to get know-how, get technology. But we undertook to produce this car. You saw images of it in the video. It was called the Indica, and we produced it in India, totally of Indian content. As we got close to putting it in the market, my friends in India somewhat distanced themselves from me, otherwise known as distancing yourself from failure. And when the car came out, I suddenly felt that I didn't have a friend in the world, and that all the warnings that people had given me were probably going to come true. But the car did come out. It did earn a 20% market share, and we showed that we could do something. As you move away, don't consider that you are coming out with a degree which is a privilege. View this moment as moving from a protected environment to an environment where you have to learn and listen, because your whole world is going to be learning and listening. Your success is going to be your humility. How many times have you heard people say, this can't be done? It's your job to remove those myths and to get things done. In many ways, we have been critical of and saddened by what has or has not happened in our country. To a great extent, this has been a function of we can't do this, or it can't be done, or vested interests saying it shouldn't be done. Ethical practices being thrown to the wind and subjective issues being brought to the table. You, in the years ahead, are going to be leaders of this country and shaping the destiny of this country. Do not grow with a view that something can't be done and so should not be done.
One was, what should I be? And again, metaphorically, you always are told that you are having to fit yourself in your predecessor's shoes. And these were mighty big shoes to fit. And so I decided to embark on a path of just being myself.
I probably would not have returned to India, except my grandmother fell ill. So I came back because she was ill. Had I stayed in the United States, my life probably would have been very different. I was very happy there and very comfortable. I had a very satisfying job. And when I came back here, I mentioned the first 8 years were frustration. My masters thought that the best way to teach me how to operate, I don't think anyone at that time had thought that I would be Mr. J.R.D. Tata's successor. So I was on the shop floor, shoveling limestone, working the furnaces, And I kept asking myself, why am I doing this? And so perhaps looking back, the most significant incident in my life was just my obstinacy to remain here rather than to go back. I was on the shop floor for about 2 or 3 years. And during those 2 or 3 years, I thought this was an absolute waste of time and it served absolutely no purpose. I was very wrong because I learned a lot in those 3 years. Perhaps what I learned best was the question of humility amongst people, because standing shoulder to shoulder with workers for 3 years and being given no special privileges, I learned what the other larger segment of our workforce did, like how they reacted, and very emotionally, when I became chairman of Tata Steel in '91, several of the workers came up to me and said, "Do you remember I was in the blast furnace with you, or I taught you how to read temperatures or whatever?" And not many chairmen have that privilege of being friendly with someone who you could call by their first name, or they could call you by their first name. So I learned a lot. It's when 10 Pakistani terrorists descended on Bombay, and amongst the places they attacked our hotel. And about 37 or 40 people in our hotel were shot and killed for no reason. And then it became an issue that, do you stand by and let this happen, or do you go into the midst of what was like a war zone and stand with your employees and go to the homes of people who were killed, and I chose to do the latter, to go every day to the hospitals to look at the people who were injured. And there again, that leaves a lasting impression on you in terms of what happened, what could have been done to avoid it, and how could you deal with this? What was the best form of support you could give to your people? I think as you grow in your organization, you will find that you get lonelier and lonelier. You have less and less people to use as a sounding board, and your decision is eventually a lonely decision. Then you're forced to look at options as you see them at that moment in time. And indeed, many of your decisions may not be the best. My own view on that is you should do what you believe is right. It may be the tougher decision, it may be the tougher option, it may be the more troublesome option that you have. But if deep inside you, you know that it's the right decision for the right reasons, not for the wrong reasons, then you should go ahead and take it, and take the flack if there's flack to be given, or humbly accept the kudos if the kudos to be given. And if you took the wrong decision, then hopefully you would learn from that when you take the next decision. It reminds me of the time when I was in Tata's, where I was put on the board of a company that dealt in pesticides. And the sales manager came to the board meeting and talked about what a bad year it had been. There were no pests. The crops were fine, and his sales were down. And I left the company the next day. So, you look at the world around you. Are the great successes the large companies of this world? And there are many, and many successful companies. Or are they the companies that took chances, where individuals started in garages, where ideas were born? Where did Microsoft, where did Apple, where did Amazon, where did Google, where did Facebook come from? They came from ideas that people felt something could be done and that they could make a difference. That all of us, in some form or another, have faced difficulties. It's not wholly true that the common man is the only one that faces difficulties. Sometimes those difficulties are less in magnitude to the person involved than what someone who doesn't wish it and has never experienced hardship is made to feel. So, starting with the premise that we all have to face difficulties of one sort or another, I would say that all of us have a person that has not to face any difficulties, I think, ends up being a person that's an unreal person in the world because he doesn't know how to deal with difficulties. And I believe every problem you face is a learning exercise for you and makes you stronger and more builds your character. If you don't have that, you have a silver spoon in your mouth from the time you're born, then you're probably going to grow up remaining like a spoiled child and not contributing to society as you should. Sometimes because the government makes the laws that you have to follow, and some of them are less rational than you'd like to believe or less understanding that you'd like to believe, those are one-way frustrations. Other than going and hanging yourself from the ceiling fan, there's nothing more that you can do except to live within the framework of that. What's very corrosive is if your decision is that you will circumvent that law and you will bypass it and find a means of doing exactly what you wish, ignoring the law, considering yourself above that law. I think that is much more corrosive than anything else you may do. If you have to curtail an operation because of law, that's the law of the land. You deal with that. You maybe go bankrupt. That's a horrible thing, but you deal with that. But if you found a way to circumvent that law, to work against it, to do things illegally, I think that's a horrible thing for anybody to consider as a way of dealing with a hard problem.